Hi, welcome to Cut Both Ways. I'm Ray. Kiki is not here because we are playing around with our recording equipment, so the recording after this is going to sound very different from this one. It didn't go too well, but whatever. Spoilers today for all of the previous Matrix films, obviously. The Animatrix, the Star Wars movies, mostly from the 7th to the 9th, the new trilogy. And just a bit of a content warning, there is mention of suicide, and today's episode is The Matrix Resurrections, so obvious spoilers for that as well. Thank you and enjoy!
So we're talking about the Matrix.
Resurrections, the fourth
Right.
in the Matrix trilogy. Quadrilogy?
I
Sanctilogy.
guess so, yeah.
Yeah. I count the Animatrix as one of them.
Do you?
Yeah. I mean, I count it as the best one. It was my favorite one.
Oh, yeah,
Here,
the
give me this.
Animatrix is very good.
Yes.
Uh,
So we're talking about The Matrix Resurrections, what we thought about it, and what we did not think about it. And I did not think it was good.
I did not think that it was the worst of the Matrix movies, though, however.
I think I would have wanted to watch the second two Matrices because I have a little bit of nostalgia for them. And I feel like they did things that I was hoping this film would do. To, put it in my usual way, is I wanted more extended fight scenes. There were some good ones. There were some really
Right.
good fight scenes in this. I think they did a good job of recapturing the wah wah kung fu of that first film and the next two films.
Yeah, maybe so, but you know what? When the first Matrix movie came out, it was so cool. Like, I feel like, okay, so we went with my brother and he's 18 and he just doesn't understand how cool the first Matrix movie was, and so, like, I don't know, he was kind of blasé about the whole experience, and I was excited.
I think it comes just as a byproduct of the times, because nowadays something like we're all living in a virtual reality is something that people think is a real possibility. And nothing against those people, think what you want, but that means that a movie that posits that as a possibility isn't going to be some groundbreaking movie, because that was the most groundbreaking thing about the film. Like, what if the world we live in was fake? They were the first ones to do that. Well, they might not have been the first ones, but they were the first
Yeah.
big ones to do that.
Yeah, and I don't know what that feeling was, but the first Matrix movie was so cool.
It was definitely, it had that hacker quotation marks style that was popular around then, and it just combined different elements that I think no one had really done in that way before, and they worked in that way. Like, there was no explanation for why they had to be wearing skin tight leather and
That's true.
moving in slow-mo and wearing sunglasses all the time, even when they're inside. But they did. They're yeah, I don't know. The for me, the biggest thing that sold me on the coolness of the original Matrix film was a lot of the dialogue sort of believed the world that they were living in, and it sort of reinforced that feeling of surrealness and almost I want to say mythology, but I more mean the metaphors, I guess, that they use to sort of reinforce that the world is fake. And the follow the white rabbit and are you ready to see how deep this rabbit hole goes? The blue pill, the red pill, it's all a metaphor for accepting your fate or denying it. There were a lot of cool things that they did that
Yeah, that text crawl was incredibly cool when it first happened.
yeah, it was a unique thing that felt very MS-DOS, which was sort of the operating system back in the day. People still use it. And I think a lot of the writing of the first and next two films was so lazy because what they did was they focused on style over substance, but then because it was lazy, it was simple. This one tried to be oh, it was so deep and it was so meaningful, but that's not where the writing and the plot of it wasn't the deep part. It just happened to be a little bit deep for its time.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not really sure what it was that made the first Matrix movie so cool when it came out. I think it might have just been one of those things where it's just a perfect storm, you know? It was just the perfect concept at the perfect time with just the perfect film editing and like the perfect metaphors that really hit. I mean, you have to remember that it came out in 1999, and it kind of felt like the end of an era. You know, like it
Yeah,
felt
it
like
did.
we were going into this new millennium, and like it really, I think it just hit at the perfect time.
Yeah, I think this should have came out in 2019, and maybe it planned on doing that, and then just with the like pandemic, it.
Well, 2019 was before the pandemic, so if it planned on coming out in 2019, it should have. Like,
Yeah, but it might have like got delayed. Like they might have been starting it like late 2019, and then the pandemic hit like while they were like, we wanted to have this done
yeah,
before 2020. I guess the pandemic happened in 2020.
yeah,
It happened
in
like March.
March. Yeah,
Oh
so
yeah, so never mind.
yeah,
That's yeah, whatever. I don't know. They I think so. Here's one thing I want to say. The first half hour of this film is awesome, and it made me very excited for
it's
what was
true.
coming up. I was very like interested in what they were trying to say with that first half hour because it really
It's true.
felt like they were saying, "We know that this is a movie kind of no one asked for." They
Mm-hmm.
like say it in the movie basically. They say like, "Oh, the like Warner Brothers has like forced us to make another Matrix
Yeah, yeah.
movie, and if we don't do it, they're going to do it without us." Uh, and I think I want to believe that that was literally Wachowski,
Yeah, I
Lana
feel like they
Wachowski,
had this conversation with the creators and with Keanu Reeves to
just
just
like
be like,
meta talk
yeah,
of like let's just put it in there because like in the movie the Matrix is something that exists within their
mm-hmm,
reality, like the movie, or it's in the movie it's a game, but the lore of the Matrix is something that exists within this world that people believe is fictional lore, whereas in the original one it was just sort of like no one knew. Ugh.
mm-hmm,
So to me, that led to an interesting thing where I was curious where they were going for it. But then that second that the girl shows up on the roof, he's about to jump off the roof, and she shows
mm-hmm,
up. I meant to look up what she was in because I recognize her, and I can't remember what she's from. I think she's from Iron Fist. But anyway, um, she shows up and she's like, "I got a white rabbit tattoo for you," and it just felt very
mm-hmm,
much like a fan, literally like kicking in the door of this movie and being like, "Hold on, we got to make this a Matrix
mm-hmm,
movie," and then just sidelining this plot that they had, and then it was just references kind of to the Matrix all throughout the movie.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, okay. I want to start off with why I was so excited about this movie. Um, we saw the trailer, and
Mm,
usually this is a thing that we don't do. We don't watch trailers because we
mm,
don't want to be spoiled for movies. But we saw the trailer, and the trailer was put together just so well. Um, the song was perfect. The choice of that Jefferson Airplane song, which is called White Rabbit, by
mm-hmm,
the way. Um, like it was just such a brilliant song choice. It was cut together so well. They like flashed to her tattoo. The blue hair was really cool.
mm-hmm,
I was very excited for like I wanted the movie to make me feel like that trailer made me feel, you
mm-hmm.
know? Um
And I do really feel like that first half an hour did feel like
yeah, it
that
felt
first half an
cool.
hour. It felt really self-referential, which it's like when you're doing a movie that is a sequel to like a huge cultural like classic,
Mhm.
to be a little self-referential is kind of important because you
Mhm.
got to recognize that you're coming from a place where everyone knows where you could go, what you could do, because everyone's written fan fiction, everyone's thought about where you could go to pick this up again, everyone's like demanded it, made video games, done this, done
Mhm.
that,
Yeah.
and to wait like what almost 20 years now to make the next installment of this franchise, like to be a little self-referential, I wasn't upset by that. I thought it
No,
was
I thought that
interesting.
was very cool. I thought that pitch scene, where they're pitching like the fourth game, the fourth
Yeah.
Matrix game, or I guess it's called Binary in the game is
Mm-mm.
called Binary. Or
He's
in the
trying to make a game called Binary, but then Warner Brothers says no, you're going to make the
oh no,
Matrix.
you're gonna make the Matrix. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I thought that was very cool. I don't know if it like I don't know if it was meant to like be funny. It wasn't really funny. It felt very grim in a way.
Yeah, it felt very
Um,
much like how I imagine Lana Wachowski was feeling, where they're like just bombarded by people being like, "This is what the Matrix is about," and it's like none of that is really what the Matrix is about. Like the Matrix was just cool. That's kind of what it really comes down to.
mhm.
It wasn't about the like aesthetics. It wasn't about bullet
Mhm.
time. It wasn't about like free your mind, stuff like that. It.
It was about the way that it made you feel, I
Mm-hmm.
guess.
Yeah.
That first movie, it really made me, and I was 8 years old, I guess,
Yeah.
but it really made me think. And I think that was the first time I really thought about, like, what is reality? What is the world?
Mm-hmm.
Just like any other 8-year-old, I hadn't really uh, come to, come to dabble in metaphysics quite yet.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think that, that is something they could have done. I'm not sure what they could have done to make it have that same feeling of like what is, reality and what is consciousness and existence. I don't know how they could update that to be relevant to the modern
yeah.
generation,
I
but
mean,
I think if they gave it some time, they could.
they probably could. I mean, I think this is what happens when someone goes, we have to make a movie. We have to make a Matrix movie. And I think this movie was the best version of, like, we have to finish the assignment. Um, but a
Yeah.
better movie would have been like, hey, I have this really cool idea. I think it would make a really great movie. Let's get it done. Let's put it together. Which is very much what I think the first Matrix movie was, where it was like, we have this really cool idea, let's bring it together.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So I just looked up what the Wachowskis have done, and this was only made by Lana Wachowski. Lily Wachowski wasn't involved in this one. After The Matrix, they made V for Vendetta, which was, I think it was pretty well
it was
received.
cool, yeah.
I thought it was cool, but the coolest part about it was the lines from the graphic novel. Because I've read the graphic novel, and any of the lines that were cool in the movie were just direct lines from the graphic novel. So they didn't really create anything there. Then they did Speed Racer. Speed Racer was it was an old like anime. It was one of the first anime that came
the anime.
to the West. Yeah, they made a live action movie of it. I'm pretty sure it was really bad. I never saw it, but
I never saw it.
I know someone who really loves it, who says like it's one of their favorite movies just because of how like carefree and almost like ridiculous it is, because it's not trying to be a serious movie, because they were like, there's no way we could make Speed Racer serious, so they just made it ridiculous. Then they made Cloud Atlas. I think I saw like 10 minutes of it and turned it off because I hated it. It was oh god, what was it? I can't remember.
What was it?
I'll show you a
Actually, can
picture.
look it up, because I
Yeah,
kind of remember it, but then
Cloud Atlas, it was the one with Tom Hanks, and it's kind of like different people throughout time. Like, oh god, it was. Let's see here. Yeah, it jumps between eras. Each storyline eventually resolves, spanning hundreds of years, writing prior storylines and found in future storylines.
yeah, I never watched
Yeah.
this.
So it's like, it's sort of like if you wrote a bunch of short stories, but then on each version of the story you use the same characters, but they all play different roles. So sometimes they're antagonists, sometimes they're protagonists. It had an interesting idea, but I don't think it was that good. And then they made this piece of garbage, Jupiter Ascending.
Yeah.
That was really
That
bad.
wasn't very good.
But then they made Sense8, and I haven't seen Sense8 either.
I haven't. No.
But I've heard many, many, many good things about Sense8. And Sense8 is probably where they got the money to now work on this movie, because I think they probably have wanted to do this for a while.
Yeah, I mean, okay. I have a pretty good idea where I think this movie failed. I think this movie failed to hand it to the next generation. That's what I think. That's my thesis. I thought that the beginning of it was so cool because it focused on these new characters and how they fit into the Matrix, and how even though Neo and Trinity and those characters who we loved were gone, they still had this lasting impact, and they were influencing the next generation.
I don't get that, because to me the best way to do that would have been to recast everyone. And I get like keeping what's his name, Keanu Reeves, and I literally just saw her name, and Carrie-Anne Moss, and it made me forget it. Carrie-Anne Moss, like having Carrie-Anne Moss and Keanu Reeves be the same actors, I think that was a little bit important to have them sort of be the center point. But I think they should have recast them by the end of it.
Yeah, exactly. I think this should have been the handoff,
I think both of them
right?
not necessarily should have died, but their consciousness should have gone to a different body, similar to how Morpheus was sort of
Mm-hmm.
remade into this AI.
Yeah. I think this film should have been the passing off the baton, and it
Yeah,
wasn't.
yeah.
It was instead clinging onto that baton, going, "No, this is mine. You can't have it."
Not really. It almost felt like them being like, remember that great movie we made? Wasn't that great?
Let's redo it.
Not let's
Yeah.
redo it even. It was literally just felt like them being like, remember those old things that we did and how cool they were when we did them. We're going to do
Yeah.
something like kind of close to that, and then we're also going to flash back and show you like a split
Yeah.
second of those things by flashing back to them. But we're not going to do them
Yeah.
as good as the last time we
Yeah.
did them.
And I want to be very clear on one point um, that I think is important to state. This is not because Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss are now older. In fact, I very much enjoyed that. Let's normalize having older actors be action
Yeah.
heroes.
So I so when I saw the trailer, my first theory for this film was that they were going to sort of have these characters be almost like digital imprints of their previous selves on the Matrix that were sort of like being resurrected, I guess you could say, in new people. And then it was going to end with them sort of accepting that they can no longer, be the self that they were before, and that they have to like allow the next generation to sort of be the one that controls the
Mm-hmm.
Matrix.
Yeah, and
And
going on with that
yeah,
point, when they talked to the architect, he was like, "Oh, there have been 5 ones before you, and Zion has been destroyed 7 times."
yeah.
Um,
So there's nothing that says there can't be another person who becomes the one,
mhm,
and they do that with Trinity, but that's not what I wanted.
mhm,
So continue on with what I was saying before I get into my actual point. When the trailer showed her Trinity kind of splitting off, she was like, ah, and she's like, there's like three of her standing in a row, and one of them is that new girl,
mhm.
Bug, I think her name is.
Yeah,
I thought
bugs.
that Bugs was going to be the girl that Trinity sort of becomes.
Yeah.
And then there's a moment where Neo looks in the mirror and he sees this kind of old man. I didn't think they were going to make him that old man, but I thought maybe they were going to make him into a new person. Or just had Keanu Reeves stay,
Mhm.
because Keanu Reeves is
Yeah.
like willing to do anything basically, I think. Um, but either way, whatever they did, I thought that's what it was going to be. New generation, quotation marks, and
Mhm.
then do a new trilogy. I think that might have sucked. But there's a way they could have done that, and what I'm thinking of that could have been cool. I think they should have not done what they did, where it's a cool idea to elevate Trinity to the state of the One, because Trinity is like an essential part of the original Matrix trilogy. She was the first character you meet when you start watching the movie, and she's kind of the coolest one throughout, bordering
Mhm.
on Neo. Neo gets close, but not quite. Um, so what one thing I was like, maybe I would want to see this, which is, though, instead Neo, though he's being resurrected, he no longer has the power of the One, because this is not the Matrix. This is the new version of the Matrix, whatever you want to call it, the
Mhm.
binary. But their consciousness are imprinted on this Matrix, so they keep getting resurrected and they keep coming back and they can't stop being resurrected.
Mhm.
But now this power of the One has been passed on to Trinity. So Neo no longer has the power of the One. He can't do his whole like blocking
Mhm.
bullets. Trinity does it now. That's a cool way to sort of shift and say, having male protagonists isn't the way anymore. It's now female protagonists. And that's
Mhm.
fine. It's a little heavy-handed. And when I thought that, I was like, that could be interesting, but it's a little bit
Mhm.
like what we were talking about in Marvel, where it's kind of like girl power for the sake of girl power. Here's the better way to do that, in my mind. Neo and Trinity are basically programs at this point, because their consciousness keeps getting resurrected within the
Mhm.
digital world. They even say it, and I was so like thinking this was going to happen. They even say it in it that they're sort of like beings have become a little bit entangled with the
Mhm.
digital code
And with each other.
and with each other. This would have been the perfect moment to have something speak about the trans woman experience, because Lana Wachowski is a trans woman.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Oh, that's very
both
cool.
of the Wachowskis are
Huh.
trans women. If Trinity, or if Neo becomes Trinity in a way, or Trinity and Neo both become one, the
Yeah,
one, you
like,
could even say.
Interesting. That
They
would be very
become not a
interesting.
man, not a woman. They become the one or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, and they're neither Trinity nor Neo. If they called them something stupid like Tio or Ninity, I don't know. That would be really stupid. Trinio, probably that. Um, it would be stupid, but you could use that to speak about the trans woman experience, which it's like as a like assigned male at birth and assigned female at birth
Mm-hmm.
person, we don't know what
Mm-hmm.
that story is. We don't know what it's like to live in that world and to
Mm-hmm.
live in that body that
Yeah,
is
that
like
would be very cool.
you are a woman, but you are, you have
Mm-hmm.
either your past as a man or whatever. I'm not
Yeah.
going to get into detail.
And talking about the metaphysics of it all, the first Matrix movie was cool because it talked about this metaphysical concept of like what is reality, and this
Yeah,
new
what is
arc.
consciousness?
Yeah, and this new arc could have dealt with what is destiny? Like, are things predetermined? Is this cycle of the one doomed to repeat multiple times?
You could go in a different way because I think to go in that way kind of implies a level of predeterminedness that I think the Matrix as a story point is trying to avoid saying.
Mm-hmm.
They're saying that no, it's not destiny. It's they keep trying and trying and trying until eventually it works. So if the first one is about like the digital aspect of like consciousness and stuff like that, why not with the next one go with the biological aspect of it? Have it be
Mm-hmm.
like what separates being
Yeah.
a robot from being a like biological human, and what separates being someone who is like born in one way versus
Yeah.
someone who's born in another way.
Yeah, and they touched on this in the like the weakest way possible, where they now have machine allies.
Yeah, they have no machine allies, but then also machines are still fighting against them.
Yeah, it's true. So they touch on this sort of thing in like the weakest possible sense.
Yeah. The other weak thing that they did that I really hated was they made bullet time a thing. Bullet time was the name that they gave to the slow-mo in the Matrix.
Mm-hmm.
Bullet time was not what they called what they were doing. Then it was never like, Neo, use bullet time.
Mm-hmm.
And then he dodges bullets. No, it was just he dodges bullets. When he does that, people call it bullet time outside of the
Mm-hmm.
movies.
Yeah.
Then they say it in the movie.
Yeah.
And like I get it, it was a bit self-referential earlier, them being like, you know what I think when I think of the Matrix? Bullet time. And then
Yeah.
everyone's like, yeah. I get that part, but to then have the main antagonist sort of be like, haha, I'm using the power that defines you to control you. It's like, that wasn't really what that was. And also, that's just so cheap.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like a power he was doing. He was
Yeah.
just dodging bullets. He was so fast, he was dodging bullets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that really
Yeah.
sucks to me.
Worse than cheap. This movie was cheesy,
It was
which is
really
I hope
cheesy.
like is, which I had hoped was never a thing that I would say about the Matrix. It was like really cheesy, like
I mean, The
it
Matrix has
was-
always been cheesy to a level.
Yeah, but this was not. This was a different type of cheese. Like the power of hand holding of all things. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah, exactly. And to have it be like, oh, we have to touch to activate our like one power, and
Yeah.
they never have it be anything that is like significant. Like it's never like in the first movie, you go through the entire movie with no one dodging bullets except for these agents, and no one stopping bullets and no one
Mm-hmm.
flying. And then at the last like 5 minutes of the movie, Neo accepts that he can control the Matrix. He, doesn't die from bullets.
Mm-hmm.
He dodges bullets earlier,
Mm-hmm.
and then he stops bullets, and then he deletes a program. Is sort of the idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you go further with that. Go further with if you're not gonna do what I'm saying, where you're not gonna like have Trinity either be elevated or have this new sort of one come into place. Have it show someone who has basically admin privileges in the computer, because it's like that having admin privileges doesn't mean I can just like stop a virus that's coming to like infect my computer. It means I can like delete programs. I can like rewrite the like executive functions of what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So you could have it literally be like, because Neo's not sure whether he's like making things up or not, he's like changing how reality works within the Matrix. And so
Mm-hmm.
like bullets are dodgeable by everyone, say, or like, buildings suddenly collapse when he looks at them and he's like, oops,
Mm-hmm.
like random things like that. Instead of it being like, oh, bullet time, I'm using it to control you. I don't know. It was just really weak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I liked the guy who played the villain.
Neil
Neil Patrick Harris. I knew it was Patrick something. I was like, Patrick Swayze? No, that guy's dead.
Is he?
Oh yeah, Patrick Swayze's long dead. He's like 10 years now.
Oh.
Oh. So sorry to break this news to you.
No one told me.
You wonder why he wasn't in a movie in the last like 10 years?
Well, people retire.
Not Patrick Swayze.
I'm a little sad. It's allowed. Yeah.
Yeah, 2009.
Wow.
Like,
okay. Well, you know what? I missed the news.
You missed the memo. 13 years ago. Anyway, yeah, it felt lazy, and it felt like they never did anything in this film that wasn't in other films. There was nothing new in this film. Mm-hmm. They had the three new things that I can think of is the AI protagonists, which was Morpheus and a few of those other people that could be these like they could exist in the real world as these sort of like nanobots, and then in the Matrix they just sort of looked like people. That was kind of cool, but they didn't really do anything with that. The other thing they added that I thought was so everything they added was cool, but it never felt like, whoa, this is like changing how I view the Matrix. Teleporting through mirrors. I kind of like that.
Well,
they could like open a door.
They had to get rid of phone lines.
Yeah, it's true.
Because who even has a phone line anymore?
But also like opening doors and being in different places, stuff like that. I think they could also do. Was it with mirrors? I think I'm talking about doors. Doors could lead to anywhere. The like hacker.
And then the mirrors could lead in and out of the Matrix.
Yeah.
Is that the?
Yeah, I think
it's kind of fuzzy actually. Doors definitely can't lead you out of the Matrix.
They can't, but you can. The cool thing that they added was you can like tell your hacker to program a door to take you to another place, and so they program a door to like lead into a train.
Yeah,
and
that
then
was
they like
cool.
yeah, they go from the train to like to the busy street, and then they go from like the street into a building that leads to like another street. And it was just cool. I thought that was interesting. Visually, it had a cool sort of like effect to it, where sometimes the floor was at a different angle than the door, so they'd open a door and then they'd step and kind of like switch up into a different axis, and I thought that was really cool. Not defining though. And then the other thing, oh my god, I forgot. Oh, the hive or whatever. These people that are programs that are just sort of meant to fill in the space because everyone's sort of leaving not everyone, but so many people have left the Matrix that the Matrix was kind of empty, so they added in programs that are bots. That's what they're called. They added in bots. And then the programs can like take control of them and make them go like zombie horde basically. None of those things really had an impact on me. I didn't think any of them were significant in a way that I thought made the movie worth watching.
Well, and that's too bad, because I feel like the bots really could have been very scary. Like that moment where they're all jumping out of windows. Like that was actually pretty cool. And I think that would be very scary. It's very like medieval war tactics where they just like filled up a ballista with like dead bodies and tossed it over walls.
The thing is, I feel like, though yes, I agree with you, I don't think this added anything to the movie that I haven't seen 100 times before in the hundreds of zombie movies that exist, where zombies just throw themselves off buildings because they don't know better. I think it would have been cooler if these bots were almost like in the Eternals, how Druig can kind of hive mind people and have them all like, when they're all firing the shotgun at the same time at the Deviant. If the bots sort of acted like that, where they have this weird like conglomeration that they make, instead of being these like mindless zombies, if they are like a literal like single program that operates in a single function, I think that could have been cool.
Or, on the other hand, it could also have been cool if they weren't that. If they, like, had their individual consciousness or whatever, and they were like, what's my body doing? Where am I going?
Oh,
what is happening?
They're still, their bot consciousness is still like, what the hell's happening? But they're, like, programming.
Programmed to jump out the window.
Oh, that would be awful.
That's awful, right? Like, that would be...
That would be really scary, I think.
Yeah, it would be so scary.
Yeah.
Like, they did that a little bit with their, there was a scene where this woman was like, where are you going, to whoever she was in bed with, and he just, like, jumps out the window. And I was like, oh, how scary would it be if you were, like, awake and being like, where am I going? Yeah, that would have been so terrifying.
It would have been so terrifying. And like I would have liked to see the implications of stuff like that, because that's one thing that the Matrix as a movie series hasn't really explored, is the regular people who don't know that the Matrix is a program living within the Matrix.
Exactly.
And so they could have had this movie be about those people, and then the decision that they have to make. Because at the end of the first Matrix, or the first Matrix, at the end of the third Matrix, it's sort of, from what I understand, the conclusion is people now have the choice once they reach a certain level of consciousness or reach a certain age. They're told this is all a digital creation. You can choose to leave or you can choose to stay. The outside world is not pretty, but you can help the people live there, or you can stay here and live an ideal life. And we never really showed those people. Like they do a really cool job. I think it's the second film where they come out of the Matrix and they show people that were born outside of the Matrix. And I thought that was really cool.
That
I
was
think
really
Mouse
cool.
is one of the characters that they introduced that is born outside of the Matrix. And I think that's an interesting concept on the reverse side, of show people born in the Matrix that chose to leave the Matrix at that pivotal point in their life, you know, that reached that age and said, no, I want to leave, I want to go to Zion.
And I mean, we all know what the right answer is, right? Like, we know that the right answer is to leave the Matrix and be human. But, you know, how many people would actually choose that? Like, how many people would be like, actually, living the ideal life while being a battery is not really the worst that I can think of, so I'm just going to stay here where I'm comfortable.
And the other thing is, like, the idea is that the outside world is kind of beyond fucked. Like,
yeah, it's awful. I mean, you know, they just grew the first strawberry that these people have seen in forever.
She's like, what? It's been like 60 years, I think they say, like, oh, it hasn't been 20 years. It's been 60 years.
Yes, it's been 60 years.
So it's been 60 years, and then how many years since, like...
The aliens, or not those, wow.
Since the robots. Or not since that, since the first people, like, settled in Zion.
Yeah.
It's been, like, how many years since, like, Morpheus and stuff like that settled in Zion. So that's, like, I want to say, like, 90 years of cultivating to make a strawberry.
Yeah.
So it's not going so well.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, how many people would actually choose that life?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not so sure I would. If somebody presented these options to me and they were like, go live in, Io is the new city.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
well, I don't really
it's
get
not even
that.
called Zion anymore. Io, or stay in the Matrix where everything is provided for you. You will have the ideal life. Sure, it's not real, but, like, you won't know any different. I might take them up on the offer and be like, yep, sure, sounds good to me. Because, like, really, what is the difference between reality and what's going on in your mind? Like, we've had Harry Potter since then, and with Dumbledore, who's like, just because it's in your head doesn't mean it's not real, Harry.
Yeah. But also, it's like, there are how many other people there with the same consciousness, like, or with real consciousnesses.
Yeah.
That it's like, you know, that is reality. There's a level of interesting facets that they add to this, but I think they don't address some of the stuff that we never got answers to. And to me, that leaves me thinking either they haven't thought of this, and that means to me that they haven't really talked to their audience and really thought about, over the last 20 years, what people have sort of been thinking about with the Matrix, or they just don't think it's that interesting. And I think there could be something interesting there, because the best Matrix movie to me is the Animatrix. I like the Animatrix better than I like all three of the Matrix movies. And the Animatrix does explore what does it mean to be a robot in one episode. It shows us the world as it transitions into this sort of Matrix era, when the robots and the humans are fighting against each other outside of the Matrix. And it has unique perspectives, I think, that aren't specifically the one centered.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I think the Animatrix is pretty great.
Yeah. One thing I also want to talk about, and this may be another thing that we end up cutting, this movie glorifies suicide. I don't know if they meant to do it. I don't know if they did it intentionally, and it is extremely problematic.
What do you mean? I actually don't know what you mean.
So when Bugs is talking about when their mind was freed, is when they saw Neo jumping off a building.
Yeah, I remember that.
This is a person who is trying to kill themselves, and another person is saying, "You made me see like what reality really is by trying to kill yourself. You freed my mind.
Well, okay.
By doing this, you freed yourself and you freed me."
Yeah. The mode of storytelling, I think I agree with you, was very problematic, but what Bugs said was like, I saw you step off the building and you didn't fall.
Yeah, and I get it,
like,
but it's
that
still...
was like, it was...
But from a plot perspective, this character is believing that they're trying to kill themselves, and another person is saying to them, this is what you should do. You're like, this is what like glory is, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I understand, like I said, that the method of telling that story was flawed, like very deeply flawed.
Yeah.
But I feel like the point of that was like, I saw you do something that is not possible, and therefore...
Yeah, but it shouldn't have been throwing yourself off a building.
No, I agree. It really shouldn't have been throwing yourself off a building.
Yeah. And he does it again later, and that's when she shows up.
Well, and then there's that the scene where Trinity and Neo both step off the building.
Oh,
and
God.
then they fly, which was the worst. That was the third act.
Yeah,
the
that's the very end of the movie.
This movie was a mess.
That was the worst part, I think, of the movie, because it was so obviously just not green screen, but just like wire. Like they just wired up two people and they were like hanging there.
Yeah, well, and not to glorify suicide, but honestly, this third act would have been better if they just stepped off the building and it was suicide. Like, you know, like, it would have been a better third act. Not to say that anyone should commit suicide. That is not the point of this. I'm saying, like, purely as a symbol of like handing it off to the next generation. That's one of the ways they could have done it. If you consider that actual, like, the scene that actually happened where they stepped out the building and then they were suddenly flying.
They weren't even flying though. They were literally just hanging there.
They were just like hanging there. They were like slow falling.
Nah, they weren't even falling. They were just hanging there.
Yeah.
It was like Trinity was holding Neo's hand, and she was like parallel and not parallel. She was like planking in the air, and he was just sort of hanging.
He was just sort of hanging. Like, and there was no point to that. Like, he first started off with Trinity. Like, they were both sort of planking in the air, and then suddenly he has, like, we don't even really know, like, some sort of doubt maybe flow through his head or something or whatever, and then suddenly he's falling, and she has him by the hand, and again, the power of hand holding, but like, yeah, why did that happen? Like, they didn't tell us that, oh, he has some doubts and now he's falling. Like, they didn't explain that whatsoever.
Yeah.
They didn't, like, and there was no consequence to it. Like, nothing happened because of it. It didn't drive the narrative in any way, so it just ended up being, like, really weird.
And then it sort of ends with them just going up to this antagonist and being like, bad boy. Bad.
Yeah.
And then leaving.
Yeah. So the third act of this movie, I think, is the real issue with the whole movie.
Issue. Like, the first act was cool. The second act was mostly kung fu, and, you know, I'll forgive it for that. Wasn't as good as the first movie. Don't know many things that could be. But they did an okay job. And then the third act was just like hot garbage.
Yeah, the third act was absolute garbage.
Yeah.
Because instead of handing it off to a new generation like any sensible, like, you know what? I think anyone would have come to, like, that is the sensible way to do this. They decided that Neo and Trinity are now together, like this power couple who, like...
Yeah, and
why?
They were already together, and so I was fine with that. And I, like, the end of the third movie was kind of poignant because it showed the sacrifice. It showed...
Yeah,
It was a little bit, like, Jesus-y, which was kind of, like, stupid, and I want to talk about the thing I just watched. As a, like, point against that. It was a little bit Jesus-y of, like, you know, he on the third day he died or whatever the hell. And So I think that that ending obviously could have been better, and they wanted to change that, but it was a little bit poignant. There was a lot of loss there. He
Mm-hmm.
like Trinity was
Yeah.
like, I brought you this far to get you to where you need to go. Me dying is irrelevant. We're far enough. You
Yeah.
can go the rest of the way yourself. Like one person, though you love me, like one person is not what's gonna like free us from the Matrix.
Yeah.
And like, so
Yeah. And that scene where they're like in Trinity's workshop and she's working on the
yeah,
bike and then um yeah, it's just and then they have this oh, I'm so confused now actually. Honestly, the third act was a little confusing. So I'm going to forgive myself for this. But they had that moment where they were being kept apart by lots of bots, and they like
mm-hmm.
struggled towards the center of the room, and they
Oh,
like
that's after the
yeah,
workshop. That's when
yeah,
they
that's
so they're
after the
like
workshop.
he like promises to leave her alone
Yeah,
at the workshop, and then he like goes like no, and then goes to the
yeah,
cafe, I think, as like
yeah, yeah,
he's saying like, oh, I'm giving up to you, but in reality he's like not giving up.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and
And
they
then all the
struggle
bots are holding
towards
them
each
back.
other,
Yeah.
and they grasp hands, and then there's this like light and explosion, basically. Like, what was that? Excuse me, what was that? Was that like a short circuit?
I
I don't
don't know.
understand. Like, it just didn't make any sense.
This is where I'm
Didn't
saying
make
that
any
it would have been
goddamn
more
sense.
interesting if that was like activating admin privileges. Like
Sure.
the password is Neo Trinity. So when Neo and Trinity touch, they have
Mm-hmm.
admin privileges. And then literally just have them like dissolve into that like matrix code and have them be
Mm-hmm.
like, no, no, this isn't what's happening. This is what's happening. All of
Mm-hmm.
them get deleted. All their clothes like become brand new or whatever. Have the
Mm-hmm.
like, I can't remember what the psychiatrist, I can't remember what they end up calling him, get like handcuffed and like chained, and so like they lock up that
Um.
program.
Yeah, he's called the architect.
No, the architect is the guy in the room with all the screens, the guy with the white
Oh
suit.
right.
That was the old guy that
Oh
was in
yeah, I
charge.
don't know. I don't
Um,
know then.
the verily, concordingly,
Yeah.
vis-a-vis.
Um.
Yeah, like that cheesy bag.
Oh, that's right. They did actually use the word verily in this movie.
No, they in this movie did they?
Did they? Didn't they?
They used it in whenever they talk to the architect. The architect has
Yeah.
like these really hilarious like he's like a thesaurus basically. He
Mm-hmm.
uses a lot of big words.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of
Well, anyway, considering how confused I am, I'm going to say that that is not my fault, and the third act of this movie actually just didn't make any sense.
I really think this is bad. Like I'm so upset by this movie because like Matrix was a little bit of my childhood. It was a little bit
Mm-hmm.
of like what I grew up sort of being the like cool thing that kids watch.
Mm-hmm.
You know, references to the
Yeah.
Matrix were in every like thing basically. A lot of stuff that comes out uh, has a little bit of Matrix in it, and so to have it just be like butchered like this, and by one of the people that made the original ones, it's like just
Yeah.
kind of like really upsetting.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't understand. The first act was so promising.
It really was. Well, I don't know that it was promising. It was interesting.
It was interesting. But you know what? No, actually, it was promising. I liked it. I liked the new characters they introduced with Bugs and, like, the crew that they introduced and, like, the new version of Morpheus, I guess. Like, even that I could be like, okay, fine. I'm a little disappointed because, like, Lawrence Fishburne just had so much um, stage presence, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
is what you would say. Like, he just had so much stage presence, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, I wish he were here. But that's okay. I can, like, learn to love these new characters. Um, yeah. So, no, I think that first act actually had a lot of potential.
I think it had a lot of potential. You're right there, but I think it wasn't necessarily potential that made me be like, oh, this is gonna be a good movie. It was just
Mm-hmm.
like you could go somewhere with
Mm-hmm.
this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see where it
Yeah.
goes, and then they went nowhere with it.
Yeah. It
So
would even have been cool if they were like, they found Neo, but he was in a sandbox. And they were like, oh no, we can't get him out of the sandbox, and we can't get into the sandbox.
mhm.
And like maybe they like transfer him into a new person, like you suggested, or like
Yeah,
they figure out some way around it, or like now they have to do everything without the one, right? Because, like, why is there a one in the first place, really? I mean, I think maybe one of the things that we need now is that there isn't a one. You can all be the one.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. He's called the Analyst, is what his name is.
Analyst. Okay.
So another thing that I was thinking of is if this is a new version of the Matrix, why not have it be that? Why not have it be we lost the old version of the Matrix in like old code, and so Neo is literally like all alone and like stuck in this like isolated world that he has complete control over, but there's no one else there because he freed them all.
Right.
That could have been interesting. I think that would have been something you could do. You could play with these themes of mental health and depression, and if that's what you wanted to end up doing, which it seems like they kind of did. But no. Yeah, I think the moment she pulls him off that ledge and says, "I have a white rabbit tattoo. Come with me," is when the movie stopped being good. Even the kung fu scenes that follow were not good enough to make me think that this is a good movie. They try to sort of like compare Neo and the new Agent Smith fighting to that subway fight scene. There is no comparison. That subway fight scene might be one of the best fight scenes in cinema, like, of all time. And so to try to make it be like, look, we're doing that again, just made me kind of mad. It's like, do your own thing and don't try to say, hey, that was cool. This is cool too, right, guys? Like, let me come to that decision. And no, it's not as cool. There's no way you can be as cool. Yeah. And there were some moments where I appreciated the flashbacks when someone would say something that a character had said in the old movies, and he would almost get this like flashback of that character saying it. It felt a little heavy-handed of like, oh, remember the Matrix? But sometimes it was interesting, sometimes it was bad. Yeah. And I don't know if the two actors that played Agent Smith and Morpheus just didn't want to come back, or if this was the plan. I can imagine if they could have got them back, they would have brought them back.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know either. So one thing I wanted to talk about was that thing I just looked up earlier, that was a video I was watching that you were like, what's happening? We'll cut that dead air. There was this really funny thing that happened where they came out with a video game called The Matrix Path of Neo, and it was made, or I don't know if it was made by the Wachowskis, but it was at least written a bit by the Wachowskis. And the interesting thing is there's a little bit of choice in the game, and you can kind of change the outcomes of some of the scenarios of the three Matrix movies.
Oh, that's cool.
It was nothing major, and it was kind of interesting. Like I remember the first moment I noticed it was when Neo is on the phone and Morpheus is sort of guiding him through the cubicles, and he gets to that moment where he goes like, okay, now go out on the ledge and step out around that thing, and Neo goes like, fuck no, I can't do this. And he drops the phone, and then he goes back inside. The agents catch him. You as the player can go back, or you can keep going. You can be like, I'm gonna make Neo go further. And it was this interesting, like, oh, like, I'm in control of the Matrix. Like, ooh. It was a cool game. Kind of meh. But the funniest thing that happened is at the very end of the game, you get to the part where Neo and Agent Smith are fighting, and you're playing Neo, you're fighting Agent Smith, you beat him, and then it goes through this segment, the like cutscene of Neo getting taken over by the agent and them all exploding or whatever. And then it kind of cuts to like a screen of white, and then it's these two like pixel figures sitting on those big Morpheus chairs, and they're like, hey, we're the Wachowskis. This is where the movie ended. We think it's a pretty cool ending, but it's been a little while. We've had some time to think about it, and this is not how we would want to end a video game. We think this is a little bit anticlimactic for a video game, so we're going to rewrite the ending of The Matrix, and they completely changed the ending of The Matrix. Instead, there's this huge, like, Agent Smith becomes this, like, conglomeration of all his bodies, and he, like, picks up buildings and starts throwing them at you and becomes, like, this, like, giant creature. and you're like flying around as the one fighting him, and it was very video game, but it was interesting to see the Wachowskis literally be like, we understand that this is unsatisfying, so we're going to change it. So I know that they have this like tongue-in-cheek humor that they can do, where they can be very meta and very like, this is a media and enjoyment that you're consuming. If you consume it this way, it's going to be unenjoyable, so let's do it this way. It was really funny, and I remember like dying laughing when I saw that, because they're these like block pixel figures that are literally just like their mouths are moving like that, and they're like, yeah, this would be boring, so instead be Superman and fight Galactus. Have fun.
Yeah, and I'm sure that they've thought about what they would do with the next Matrix movie a lot in the past, I don't know, 20 or so years, I guess.
Yeah. About that.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, you'd think there would be enough time for them to sort of figure out what to do with this, but it really feels like they didn't. We're running really short, and there's not really much else I need to say.
No, yeah, there's not really much else I want to say either. I would like to reiterate that this was not a bad movie because Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss are, like, older now.
I think they did a great job.
I think they did such a great job.
I think the biggest shortcoming of this movie is everyone who acted in this movie acted amazingly. Even the really kind of bad special effects that made Jada Smith look old. I can't remember what her character name is. The old lady that's in charge of Zion now. Niobe, that's her name. Her makeup to make her look like 60 years older was a little bit bad, but even her acting was awesome. I think she was this great, like, I have to be in charge of Zion or Io now, and I have to put Io ahead of even what I believe. And that's the kind of person that ends up in charge of cities like that, of like these like last resort places.
Yeah, and I mean, I would like to especially highlight Carrie-Anne Moss, though, because, like, we do end up having older male actors still play action heroes. I'm thinking of, like, Bruce Willis, basically.
Yeah,
I'm
Liam
like,
Neeson.
yeah, exactly. Like, I can think of actors who are, like, let's say over 30, 35, who still play action heroes. But, like, that does not happen for actresses. Like, if
Charlize Theron is probably, like, the only one.
Yeah. So, I think that this is definitely something that should be normalized. I thought Carrie-Anne Moss was great. She can still kill it as Trinity.
Yeah. They didn't do as good a job with the outfits in this one, I think. I think it might just be like a sign of the times that we've sort of moved on from these trench coats and like sunglasses and like biker boots.
But, like, God damn it, I wanted to see her in, in a trench coat.
At the end she was.
At the end she was, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, is like, if the big payoff of this movie is Trinity like being a badass again and having these powers of the one and showing like her kick ass, I want that for the whole movie.
Yeah.
Like, why give me this little like 5-second snippet of her doing it at the end? Give me a whole movie of that. Like, come on. That's what I would prefer.
Yeah.
I don't want the story about how she also becomes the one with her barely in the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
I want a story of her.
She spent more time as like a beaten down wife and mother of two than she did as Trinity.
Yeah. I do think that their like coffee talk was really interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, but
her being like, oh, I like, played your game and I saw myself in that character.
It was super interesting.
I thought that was really interesting.
Like,
and
I don't know. I don't have really a point or an objective here. I just want
just to reiterate that.
I think we should normalize this.
That is another big takeaway of this, is like, we wanted more of Trinity. And this movie was clearly setting that up as the plot, that Trinity is now as important as Neo. But you had her in like a third of the movie.
Yeah.
If even that. She was in a third of the movie, but the third she was in, a third of that is her actually being Trinity.
Yeah.
And so I want to see Trinity kicking ass, and I don't want to have to wait for that. I don't have to wait for a whole movie and now watch the second movie where they're going to have to write a whole new random plot about why are the machines rebelling now, till I could justify having Trinity kick ass, which I don't think they will. I don't think there's going to be a Matrix 5.
Yeah. And at this point I hope not. Let's not beat a dead horse.
Well, that's a thing though. I kind of feel the same way about this that I do about Spider-Man, where it's like in an opposite sense. I really like the new Spider-Man movie, and it makes me want 3 more Spider-Man movies. I really hated this Matrix movie, but it does make me want more Matrix movies because I think this world that they live in
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
something that
me
you could
too.
do something with. It's something you could have this continuing, almost unending story to go with, where you
Yeah.
just keep making new iterations. You keep having reboots and things like that, where it's like, oh,
Yeah.
we're gonna start it over again instead of a
Okay.
computer program. It's a fucking whatever program.
I do want more Matrix movies. I don't want any Matrix movies where like Neo and Trinity are like flying around and just
And
like
cheesy love music
yeah,
is
just like
playing. It's like,
cheesy
wow, look how exciting this
yeah.
is. We've had people flying for a while. We've had an entire 10 years
yeah.
of Marvel movies.
Where their hand holding is saving the world. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, skip, thanks.
Yeah.
Um,
Did you ever watch? Oh, my brain just blanked. Mad Max Fury Road.
no, I haven't.
Let's watch Mad Max Fury Road.
Okay.
Mad Max Fury Road is the perfect example of a trilogy or anthology of movies that has died, but the cultural impact of those movies is still around. The Mad Max movies made like post-apocalyptic movies popular. So you can draw comparisons here. I think there was literally a trilogy of Mad Max movies too. They were really disjointed and weird, and the first one isn't even technically a Mad Max film, but they made this Mad Max Fury Road. They had a new actor take over the role of Mad Max because the current one is a hot piece of garbage. Like, sorry, maybe some people will take that as like a rude take. Dude's a piece of shit. They got a new actor, awesome actor, Tom Hardy, love him, and he plays Max. And they took the spirit of the old films. I even think it might be the same director. I'm gonna look that up. And that movie might be one of the best films of our generation.
Wow.
It's so fucking rad. And they do exactly what was cool about the Mad Max films is they made it like very like post-apocalyptic in its own sort of like logic. A lot of stuff that like, oops, I typed in the Matrix instead of Mad Max. The first 2 letters are the same, that's why. Where like certain things just like come out of it being this sort of world where it's like water is like a scarce resource, and so like people worship water basically. He directed the first 2 Mad Max films, and then he directed this 4th one. There was a 3rd one. I don't know that I remember much about it, but I remember people not really liking it. But yeah, it's a perfect example that you can do this. You can come back after 20 plus years. 1981 was when the second one came back.
Well, I mean, Star Wars was an incredibly successful reboot. I mean, I didn't love it. It was successful. Come on, people went and saw them. People even liked them.
1985, even longer, 30 years between Mad Max 3 and Mad Max 4. And Mad Max 4 is, one of the best films of our generation.
Yeah.
Nope. Every Star Wars movie after Episode 6 is hot garbage. Like, people are going to hate me for saying that.
Yeah.
I love Star Wars. I'm a huge Star Wars. I have a Star Wars tattoo.
Yeah, that's true. It's a big one, too.
It's a big one. 1, 2, and 3 came out when I was, young. I hated them when I was young. I still don't really like them. A lot of people sort of view them with this like nostalgia lens, and I can understand. A lot of the fight scenes are well choreographed, and I think it was just an effect of like weird like director, producer, whatevers of that sort of like time period, because a lot of movies had this weird like, why is that in there? And they were just bad. And then these next 3 films, awful. I hated them.
Yeah, people do like the
7, 8,
reboot.
9?
I know.
No, they don't. I don't
No?
believe you. I
don't know.
challenge you to find me a person who likes episode 7, 8, or 9. Some people might like 7 because 7 is just episode 4 all over again. It is beat for beat the same movie.
Oh, yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
8,
I know.
people hate it because it goes against the formula. I like lots of it because it has very interesting visual effects to it. I think there's a lot of unique things they do to have emotional moments be told by the sound that happens with it and like the visuals of it, instead of it just being like, I am sad, I will cry. Tragedy is dictated by the score, let's say. And then the ninth one was, boy, I cannot
I
think
thought
of a
it was
worse
pretty
film.
awful. I didn't like the new series of films. I liked Rogue One.
Yeah, I wouldn't count those as the new series though. Those
Yeah.
are spin-offs.
Yeah, no, that's true. I
I
really
liked
liked
Rogue
Rogue
One.
One.
Have
Yeah.
you seen the Han Solo movie?
No.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah, I wasn't planning on it.
Not as bad as 9, but it's still pretty bad.
Anyway, they were still successful at box office, so
They
I
were,
think people
yeah.
probably did like them.
I think they were successful because people went to see them because they have to,
Right.
because they're Star Wars.
Right. Yeah, I guess so. Okay, well, you know what? Film reboots are maybe not the most successful thing in the world.
No.
I think we're wrapping up. I think what I'd like to know is, if you were given a chance to, would you stay in the Matrix? Red pill or blue pill?
Red pill or blue pill.
Red pill or blue pill.
So we got to say, if you leave the Matrix, you're going to post-apocalyptic world. You're eating bland oatmeal for the rest of your life.
And being hunted down by machines.
No. The sort of, I mean, I guess it sort of like
Yeah,
accidentally turns out that way, but
well,
the idea of being like
you're miserable. You're cold. You're miserable.
you're cold, you're miserable. You
You're
have
eating
like
gruel.
metal ports all over your body. You probably can't sleep very comfortable with like a weird like jack in
Yeah.
the back of your skull.
Oh, and also probably most of the people you know and love still in the Matrix.
Yeah. Wow. I'll see you later. I'm going to the Matrix.
Yeah, I don't think I want to go to Zion.
Maybe
That's for
Star
sure.
Wars Episode 9 is good in the Matrix.
Maybe. I don't know.
The robots wrote it better.
Oh boy, they probably did.
Yeah. It is a strong argument, and like that's something. Not to like sidetrack the end of our podcast here, but it is like a powerful message that you could have talked about. You leave the Matrix. You're eating gruel. You have these like uncomfortable ports all over your body. Everyone you know and love might still be in the Matrix.
Yeah.
You're living underground because above ground is inhospitable. You're not being hunted by machines because the point of leaving the Matrix or
Yeah,
giving
there's a
being
peace treaty
given
now,
the choice of
and
leaving
yeah.
the Matrix is there's the peace treaty. But I think importantly, an important decision is if you leave, you can't go back.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I
Good.
would stay.
Yeah.
I think I'd stay in the Matrix.
I think I would too.
Yeah. I like video games. I get pretty engrossed in video games. That's sort of what the Matrix is just like.
Well, and I can't like. Okay, so current world, I'm basically selling my body for work, basically. Like, not in the sense of like sex work. This is like, that's not what I meant, but
Like metaphorically, like
metaphorically, I'm selling my physical being and my brain in order to make a living.
yeah.
I really don't see the difference.
Yeah, us sitting here like yapping into this microphone is us selling our body.
Yeah, it is.
Please give us money. We're so cold. We have these metal ports all over our body and all we've eaten is gruel. Bye!
Bye!